Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you're well. Joining us here on quite a muggy, weirdly hot day in Oxford, but it's a lot less hot than it was last week. So for that, I am glad. I'm delighted to be joined here by writer Wes Brown, who also happens to be one of our ultimate novel writing course tutors. Hi, Wes. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me, and thanks for logging on.
Yeah. So Wes is going to be here answering any of your questions about writing, about getting published. So if you do have anything that you're interested in knowing about, or even more about Wes's work as well, do just pop a comment into the chat box, and we'll do our very best to answer those for you. And yeah, we're really glad to have you joining us here today. So I'll just give you a little bit more information about Wes, just in case you're new to his work. So as I mentioned before, Wes is a writer, an editor and a critic with a background in the publishing industry, and he's got many years of experience in teaching creative writing. So we're delighted to have him on the Jericho Writers Ultimate Novel Writing course for obvious reasons. He's published novels, short stories, reviews, poems, and his autobiographical novel about pro wrestling will be published in a few months. So do look out for that. It's going to be a really, really great book. Wes has taught creative writing at the University of Kent, the University of East London, and City Lit, and was awarded a Chase PhD scholarship to research narrative nonfiction. So welcome. Thanks again for being here with us today, Wes.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's get started. If you're just joining us, if you have any questions for Wes at all, please do just drop them into the comments. And anything about writing, anything about getting published. We know it can be quite a confusing and sometimes challenging industry to navigate, and Wes has been there and done that. So if you are interested in learning more, do just ask us a question, and we'll get on that for you.
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask silly questions as well, because
Yeah.
they're often the best, or the thing that you think, oh, this is really obvious, everybody knows this. They don't. And like, if you're coming into this industry with no experience, there's lots of strange and confusing things and things that, you're too afraid to ask. But here's a place to ask it as well. And also about writing, and you can have some quite highfalutin answers that are quite abstract, and that they can be quite good. But sometimes I like to just know what a writer's routine is, and when do they write, and do they write with a pencil, or that kind of stuff. So we can ask for big questions, we can ask the simple questions. Just ask what you like, really.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, on that note, do you write with a pencil? I'm curious now.
I used to. The purist in me wants to write with a pencil or a typewriter or something, and have that sort of kinetic feel, the touch to something. And I would say my writing tends to be better if I write with a pencil. I like to get like an art pad and get like a good sort of thick pen. I don't know what the pencil weight would be, like quite a dark one, and just sort of sketch stuff out. And then when you get to the laptop, you kind of transcribe it, and it goes through a process of editing, and it ends up being a little bit more polished than it would do. But these days, with time constraints and everything like that, I'm just on the, just smashing out some words as fast as I can on my laptop.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the thing, isn't it? Maybe pencil is a luxury for the people who've got really, faraway deadlines that they don't have to meet that soon. Do you feel like when you do that, when you do transcribe it onto a computer, do you feel like everything you wrote down on the pad is preserved, or do you feel like anything gets lost?
It goes through a kind of period of translation. It's like you've got the original thing, and then as you kind of writing through it, you sort of think, oh, that could be that. Or I do an odd thing where my sentences come out the wrong way around. So the end of a sentence should be the beginning, and go, oh, okay, that works better that way. Or because you know where that sentence is going, or where that paragraph's going. And then when I go through that process, what ends up on the page is often a little bit tidier than if you're just writing straight to laptop. And the thing is with writing straight to laptop as well, is it can look too final.
Okay.
It already looks kind of typeset, and it's kind of on screen. Whereas I like the messiness and sketchiness of a pad. But novels are typically 80,000, 100,000 words. You've got deadlines, you've got kids, you've got other things to be doing. So the best thing that I ever learned was to just sort of write hot, write messy, and let your first drafts not be too formal, not worry about them, and to just enjoy just kind of being wild and just letting your imagination run free, like just getting some words on the page. Because inevitably you're not going to keep all those words, and if you're anything like me, you'll work and work every sentence 100 times. So it almost doesn't really matter what comes out to begin with, as long as it's like a sketch. You want to get the key material down, some key ideas, a few sentences you like, a few words that you can play with, and then you'll develop it over time. But yeah, especially with a novel, momentum is key. So I used to try and perfect every page and like write a perfect page, perfect paragraph. And sort of piece together a novel like a mosaic. But it doesn't really work like that. And momentum, it's like climbing a mountain or something, or climbing a big wall. You don't look down, you just want to keep moving. That momentum can break through writer's block and all the anxieties we feel and all the doubts and all that kind of stuff, and you just get caught up in this wave. And then the draft comes out, then you can sort of take a look at it and see what needs work and what doesn't.
I mean, that's so true. I guess you kind of need that self-motivation as well, don't you, to be able to kind of stay on top of that momentum. I mean, is there anything that you do so you don't feel like you kind of like, slip off the track at any point?
Well, deadlines are good. Like writing journalism has been really good for my fiction, because when you write journalism, you've got to hit a word count, you've got to say some stuff, and a lot of the time you're under pressure to just get the stuff out and then shape it really quick. And then with prose fiction, I find myself kind of being a lot more precious and thinking about things and trying to perfect sentences, and that process can get quite nebulous. So writing in a similar way, where it's like, I need 1,000 words today, I'm going to get that down and then move on. And it frees up a lot of, if you write too self-consciously and too aware of what you're doing, I don't think you ever get into the real good stuff.
Right.
And it can be too self-aware and considered, and you get the depth of perception. So you want your self-awareness, but you want the unconscious associations, and you want everything else that comes up, and the stuff that surprises you. You know, it's like going trawling deep into your mind and subconscious, and then coming up with the nets, and some of it bric-a-brac and nonsense. I mean, some of it is treasure,
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I guess that's where the kind of pencil comes in handy. I feel like that's a good tool for just doing that trawling. But I love that imagery of it being just a giant net.
Well, I quite like to storyboard and sketch as well. Like my drawings are just stick people. They're not fancy, but you get a kind of idea of where the scene's going and who needs to be where, and where to focus your point of view.
That's really cool. I've got a question in from Karen, she's asking us about the Ultimate Novel Writing course. So welcome everyone if you've just joined us. So I'm here with Wes Brown, a writer, but also a tutor on our Ultimate Novel Writing course. So Karen's asked, what's the main thing you would expect writers to get from the course?
To get better. I think everybody does become a better writer one way or another, in a way that they want to improve. There's no absolute standard of good writing or whatever, but the things that the writers themselves want to improve, I think that they do improve. And I think one of the key things that writers get from it is attention. You get somebody who pays a great deal of considered attention to your work, and you're also part of a group who are very, very helpful, and they want to give your work attention as well. The author Julia Bell has recently written a fantastic book. It's a short book about the attention economy. And she's written some articles about this as well. One of the things that she thinks that writers actually want is attention. We write because we want people to read our words, and we have a story to tell. And attention is a really vital human commodity that's really important, and we shouldn't overlook that. And so the course is a place that's a safe space, that's supportive, that's constructive. You get attention, and it makes you feel good. We all love that, and that we can, rather than trying to hammer out a novel by ourselves in a shed somewhere, and it's really hard to get your friends and family to read it, or to
Or they tell you they have and they haven't.
Yeah. Oh, it's great work. It's amazing. Or whereas we create this online kind of virtual community, and you get bathed in the warmth of that attention, and it can be so nourishing, and it can help you overcome some of the anxieties you might have or some of the difficulties.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, it's not an academic course, so you don't have to sit through hours and hours of heavy content, do tons of research, read 1, 2, 3 books a week and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of more like a buffet where we have the weekly tutorials and exercises that you can take or leave, and they'll always be there for you as well. So if 1 month it's characterization, but you're doing something else, you can go back to that month indefinitely.
Yeah.
So you can, there's a sort of buffet approach to where you take what you need at that particular time.
Yeah.
But then for me, the thing that's really most nourishing is that we get these 2 group calls per month where you get to workshop and discuss and be with your group virtually. But you also get a one-to-one with your tutor where we read extracts from your work month to month, and we can sit down, we can build that relationship. And what I really try to do is to not impose, my personal preferences or some sort of sense of objective standards onto people. The first thing I do is try and build a bond with the author, and is to try and understand what their intentions are, and what kind of book do they want to write? What kind of audience do they want for their book? What kind of effects do they want to create? And then I tailor my feedback, almost like a mechanic, to create this machine with them and go, well, if we want it to do these things, we need to change here or tweak here, or have you considered that?
Yeah.
And then at the same time, if you were to do an MA, you tend to submit a short story every term, and your dissertation's about 15, 20,000 words typically. If you do a PhD, at the end of it, you submit a book, but that's after 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
You also get a full-length manuscript assessment. So we read your entire book as well. And in my experience of teaching in various forms and institutions, people make more progress on this course than anywhere I've taught before. It's partly because people tend to be a bit more mature, not necessarily in age, but just in their, that they're independent-minded, they've got good resources, that they want to get on, they want to listen, they take everything they can from the course. That it's the quality of the relationships and that focus of attention and the depth of reading that we do that helps people progress in a really, fast way. And, we've had people who we have got very varied kind of amount of experience that authors have. Some people have not written anything. Some people have been writing for years, and we still, there's still a way to polish the stuff that's already good, or to help people along who don't have that experience. And like last year, I had a guy never written a word, and he's just completed a narrative nonfiction book. He's a taxi driver. He's a brilliant storyteller, and he brings that voice to this travel monologue, this travel account that he's written of his journey to the United States, and it's fantastic. And he's written a book where he hadn't written anything. I think he said that he last wrote an essay 40 years ago when he was in school.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, thank you. Thank you for that. And I think what you said about, the writer's need for attention is just so interesting, and it's so true. And maybe it comes down to kind of almost an intrinsic human need, I feel, that kind of, and if I've learned anything from watching people interact on social media, is that we're all craving attention. But I'll pop the link to Julia Bell's work in the chat for everyone afterwards if you are interested in looking more into that. Thank you. And thank you, Karen, for your question. Thanks to everyone who's joining us. If you do have any questions for Wes, please do just drop them into the comments. But I'd love to kind of know then, I guess, leading on a little bit, kind of what do you look for in a piece of writing? So when you're considering working with someone, like what makes a piece of writing stand out for you? What kind of hooks you in, as it were?
I like distinctiveness. It's like I like people. I like people to be self-actualized. And my friends are like, if you got them all in a room, it's just like, the cast from The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen or something. It's just like everybody is kind of unique in their own. And I love people who are just themselves, and they might be completely one way or completely that way. But I find when people are self-actualized as well, you can give more to others, and there's a strong core there. So I like work to be distinctive. I like work that knows what it is and what it wants to do. Now, sometimes writers are more accomplished, and that's more kind of, actualized, and you see that on the page. But what I love to see as well is where there's the sort of seedlings of it. There's the bits of it. I can see something here that's going to be original and a bit different. I can see some personality here. It's raw. It's not polished in any way. But for a time I was an English teacher in a secondary school, and I've literally taught creative writing to people with low levels of English skill or English speaking ability and so on, and seen how they can develop all the way up to university level. So the thing that I get out of the course is helping people help themselves to get better. And for everybody that's different, that's a different arc and so on. And so that's what I like to see in the work is something that I can latch onto, where it's hard to, I used to do this all the time as well. It's hard to do when you're new as well, and you want to be regarded as a writer to look how good at me, look at this sentence, look at this, look how well I can write. Is I want people not to impress me through being fancy or fireworks. I want someone to impress me by going, look, from the first page, here's a story, and this is how I'm going to tell it, and that it feels authentic and honest. And that doesn't mean that. I don't just mean, I do a lot of life writing, a lot of creative nonfiction. I don't just mean, I mean, a fantasy novel can be honest. Does this world draw me in? Are these characters believable? Is this a story that's going to take me somewhere?
Yeah, for sure. It's that kind of clarity of intention, isn't it? It's just writers knowing exactly where they want to take you and having that really kind of clear idea in their head, and doing it for the kind of, because they want to tell the story, not kind of for any other reasons, or like you said, for the kind of accolades. It's because they have this really great story that they want to tell, and they really, want to get it out there. So that's it's
a bit like going on a roller coaster. You get this massive, okay, this is going to be good, and when you get in, the reader straps you in, and you feel like, right, the writer straps you in. You feel, right, I feel good here. We're gonna have some frills and spills. Where sometimes it's hard to do. Things can be a bit indistinct, or just kind of like the writer, especially in the first draft, the writer's not entirely sure where things are going. And what you'll find after multiple drafts is that the novels are a very well-constructed, well-crafted thing. And all the pipeline that you need for the ending should be laid within the opening chapters as well. And you can see some of the architecture generally the opening of the book.
Fantastic. I mean, I guess that's something, or another reason why it's always helpful to have, be working with people as, throughout the process, because they can kind of point these things out to you, especially, someone who's already been through that process themselves, and can just kind of give you those kind of pointers on, what you kind of need to do to be able to achieve that. So I think that that's often really important. I mean, many people just think of writing as a lonely pursuit, and I don't think it has to be, and I think it probably shouldn't be, because it can just, I think that collaborative nature of it can really help to kind of push a lot of writing up to the next level.
Yeah, it really is collaborative as well. And if you want to write for other people, you need to have other people's eyes. You need to have other people's interpretations to really understand the effects that your work's having on them, and whether the things that you want to land are landing, and they're landing in the way that you want them to land. And throughout all of that, you have editors, you have mentors, you've got your classmates, you'll have beta readers, but there's a lot of people who are involved collaboratively in the production of a book.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I think it's just one thing as well that we try and help to advise upon and joke at writers, is also making sure people, get kind of guidance from people who have been there and done that, and, are really kind of experienced in their kind of specific fields, as it were. So you are kind of getting the support, useful and valuable support, not just kind of, being told something for the sake of it. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I'm here with Wes Brown. who happens to be one of our tutors on the Ultimate Novel Writing course, but is also a fantastic writer in his own right. So if you've got any questions for Wes, please do drop them into the comments. I'd love to talk a little bit more about your work now. So I know you often write so you've written novels specifically that are creative nonfiction based, but I know you do write in a variety of genres as well. But I'd love to just so I know you've written a book about your experience as a pro wrestler, which sounds like a really interesting kind of field to kind of compete in. But then you now are working on a piece about cage fighting, and you're also working on a true crime novel about the murder of the kidnap of Sharon Matthews. So could you just kind of talk a little bit about what draws you to these specific subjects, and then how is it different when you're writing a piece of creative nonfiction when the lens is pointed towards yourself versus when the lens is pointed towards a story that maybe doesn't have those personal ties to your life at all?
Yeah, I mean, the hard distinction between fiction and nonfiction is a particularly Anglo-American Puritan kind of thing. And in other cultures, you don't necessarily have so hard a divide. In Japan, there's a tradition of the I novel. In some Eastern European countries, that they have a similar word for writing to, my French is terrible, but Bell's letters that the French have, where it's just about the quality and the beauty of the writing, less than about facticity. So in a sense, I feel that all narratives are personal to an extent, and I think it was Nietzsche that said that every novel is a memoir of a subconscious.
I love that.
Even if that stuff that's been externalized or you're writing about is kind of a fantasy, whatever, usually these are kind of externalizations or, symbolic references to something real. We all watch a lot of superhero stuff or like The Boys and Amazon, but that's really about Trump, and it's really about modern America and all that kind of stuff. So I don't find the line between fact and fiction to be that severe sometimes. And then a lot of my favorite novelists borrow from life a lot anyway, and they just camouflage and just change details as and when, just to make the story that bit smoother. But yeah, I started out writing what I call novelty novels, and I was doing social realism, and then the publication of my first book didn't go that great, and I was a bit disappointed by it. And then a number of things happened, and in a bit of a bad place. And I just felt I'd kind of fallen out of love with fiction in some ways. And it felt that, J.G. Ballard says we live in a world of fictions of every kind, but we live in this mass communication society now where everything's packaged and narrativized, and that we're increasingly performative and, and all this kind of stuff. And it felt like we already live in a world of fictions, and that I wanted to try and deconstruct some of that and find stories that did feel more real or feel more authentic. So I ended up I wasn't in a great place. My dad used to be a pro wrestler. He traveled the world in the 60s and 70s. And I trained as a pro wrestler when I was a teenager, but I gave it up because I wanted to become a writer. And then at that point in time, my dad got invited to teach a wrestling seminar in Runcorn. So I went along with it, got involved, posted the pictures on Facebook, and then a professional writing colleague got in touch with me, and he was like, well, if you go and train as a wrestler and write a story about this, I'll pay for your training.
Fantastic.
Oh, well, that sounds like a good gig. And I was really into the sort of Tom Spanbauer dangerous writing school of thought, which is where you write from where it hurts, you write something real. And a lot of stuff I was writing was quite young man peacocking, look how little I am. And he wanted me to write something a bit more gritty and real. So I was like, I'll go write what I want, but I'll do the training anyway. Cheers. I ended up doing the training, but the training was so hard. Like you had hundreds and hundreds of trainees that come through the door, and very few people made it onto a show. So when I made it onto a show, I'd fallen in love with this crazy kind of carnival circus life, and this alter ego of Earl Black Jr. And I carried on, and I ended up wrestling for 5 years.
Fantastic.
And I got completely lost in it, a bit like Undercover Policemen, where they get too embroiled and they be sort of dissident environmentalists they were meant to be kind of tracking. The line between me and my persona got completely blurred.
Yeah.
And I got obsessed with a form of wrestling called strong style, which is influenced by Japanese martial arts and mixed martial arts, and is a very realistic style of pro wrestling. And I wanted to achieve this holy grail of realism, and I ended up becoming the All England champion.
Wow.
Yes. But then the world of pro wrestling could be quite nefarious. It was people living in their own fictions, and it was unregulated, and it was quite dangerous, and it was quite corrosive. You know, wear the mask too long, and it corrodes the face, and that's what happened. And the story is about kind of feeling like an imposter, becoming another character, pretending to be somebody else, but then finding out that doesn't work for you, and then how you come to some sort of peace as this new version of Wes Brown, who's a writer of creative nonfiction. So that's kind of that book. And I do like research. I call it method writing. I like doing slightly mad things.
Yeah.
As a form of research, as a kind of rehearsal, you know.
Yeah. Do you think that helps you kind of get a bit closer to that place that we were talking about before, where it is a kind of everything's coming from a place of truth? I guess any kind of like ego or like pomp around the writing kind of gets removed when you're kind of going through that experience to kind of get to where you want to take the story.
I feel like I suffer from a poverty of the imagination sometimes, because I'm just not that good at making up lots of stuff, making up fancy plots. I'm not like that. And that I find if I get really good material, it's like a chef with really good produce. I like my writing to almost be invisible, where there's just this immediate action and thought and things happening on the page. You're so just embroiled and engrossed in that story, you're not aware of all the sentences and so on. So rather than try and write too fancily, I want to try and get really good material. And then it's not a case that the material tells the story itself, because if you're writing fiction or non-fiction, you're writing a narrative, and that involves creating scenes, building tension, character development, and all the stuff of storytelling. Because initially I just thought I'd just write down what happened, but stories don't work like that.
Yeah, it's so true. I think there's definitely kind of almost like a flow you have to kind of get into and you have to find that out for yourself. I think you can definitely, people can kind of help guide you there, but I think it's something you kind of have to, as a writer, really, really find your way into it. I think it's an interesting one. It almost sounds almost spiritual in the way you've kind of described it, as a kind of experience, like especially, in your case as a pro wrestler, pushing the body to such extremes, and then then just letting the kind of like truth flow from that. It's really interesting.
I quite like Oscar Wilde's life imitates art, and things around. And for me, it's like life is a rehearsal for autofiction. That's where the real truth comes out, and where you can kind of unpack everything and you see how everything works.
It's so true. We've just got another question coming in from Glenna. So she's just asked, so she's drafted 3 novels and the writing seemed to flow. I've tried drafting another one twice, and each time I falter at 30 to 38,000 words. Is the story telling me it's not right?
I like that. Is the story telling me, you have this relationship, and the story almost has a life of its own. I'd need to know a bit more context and sit down with you and discuss everything like that. But oftentimes, if something stops, that there's something wrong in the mechanism. In Tom Spanbauer's language, there's not enough horses. It's like, if you imagine the story as a carriage, you need a number of horses to carry it through, and you need more than one horse. So it might be a case of finding out where the other horses are and getting a bit more horsepower in there. And sometimes it might be that you've jumped the shark, but it might be actually a shorter story, or that we may have the entry point may be too late in, and we need to go back a little bit further in order to give ourselves some more space to develop to that point. One thing to say is, though, that writing advice is very unique, and it depends person to person. So there might be a very particular reason why that story is faltering at that point. So it won't be the same for everybody. But oftentimes I feel like it's sometimes good to go back to the main plot points and the main engine, and try and work out, is there still enough conflict in there? Have we resolved that conflict too early? Is there anything we can do to complicate things?
Yeah, and I guess maybe at this point as well, that's when it's also worth getting a second pair of eyes to kind of have a look and then give their thoughts on it. It's always, I think, useful to kind of have that sounding board, and people might be seeing things that you can't initially, and helping you and then will help you to kind of push through.
There's that, and sometimes if you push too hard, you don't get anything. You just sweat, strain. If you leave it for a bit, inevitably your subconscious goes to work. You read and watch other things, and then you go, that's what was missing. It comes to you. So we want momentum. We want to write all the time, but then at the same time, you can't just force through things that aren't there. And sometimes just loosening up or soft, like, as long as you're either reading or writing, I don't think it matters. So if you're having a bit where you can't write for whatever reason, or you get stuck, as long as you're reading stuff and reading interviews with other writers and all that kind of stuff is all part of that process.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm afraid we've run out of time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I think, Wes, we're going to have to get you back because I feel like this conversation could have just carried on and carried on. So yeah, everyone, do kind of, if you're not already following us, do follow us for like notifications about that. And hopefully if Wes is able to and has the time, can come back and just talk to us a little bit more about writing and the process, because this has been a really, really fascinating conversation. So thank you so much, Wes, for that.
And I'll just finish up by saying, obviously, like, creative nonfiction, autofiction, biographical, but I love speculative fiction. I like crime novels, and I am open to novels of all kinds as well. And it's more of a relationship with the author that I'm looking for. Somebody you can trust, who we can get on with, and who's going to work with me, and I can work with them. That matters more than genre in many ways. And just to answer the question, can writing be taught? Yes.
Yes. And on that note, please do go over to the Jericho Writers webpage. If you're just joining us, Wes is going to be tutoring on our ultimate novel writing course starting this October. So if you've liked what you've heard, please do go on, send in your application, choose Wes to be your tutor. Like he said, he works across a variety of genres. So he'd be more than happy to take a look at your application and see, if it's going to be a good pairing. So I think, and if you are just joining us and have missed the rest of the conversation, do go back to the beginning and watch again, because we've had some really good food for thought here, and I've learned a lot. So I'm sure it will be some insightful things for you guys to pick up as well. So thanks so much, Wes, for that. I'll also post the links to Wes's own work in the comments afterwards as well, in his social channels. So do look out for that, and do go and follow him. And if you do have any more questions, pop them into the comments. We'll come back and check. And so I'll get those sent over to Wes, and we'll get those answered for you as well. So sorry that we've run out of time today, but we hope to see you again soon. And we hope, Wes, you'll be able to join us again soon as well, because that was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.